This is the story of a nation divided, of a declaration of independence, a brutal civil war, a humanitarian catastrophe, and a movement that would rise decades later to reawaken the dream of Biafra. Nigeria gained independence in 1960, but underneath the new state were deep regional, ethnic, and political tensions. In January 1966, a group of mostly Igbo army officers staged a coup that toppled the government. Later that year, a counter-coup and violent anti-Igbo pogroms in parts of northern Nigeria left thousands of Igbo civilians dead or displaced. Fear, suspicion, and mass displacement pushed the eastern region's leaders to conclude that the Igbo people could no longer be safe inside a united Nigeria. On May 30, 1967, Lieutenant Colonel Odumegwu Ojukwu, the military governor of Nigeria's eastern region, declared the independent Republic of Biafra. He said the secession was necessary to protect the Igbo from further massacre. The federal government in Lagos rejected the secession, and within weeks the country had slid toward full-scale civil war. The Nigerian federal forces fought to prevent secession. Biafra, isolated and short of military supplies, relied on limited ports and struggled to defend itself. The federal blockade produced a catastrophic famine. Images of starving children and mass suffering became some of the most searing symbols of the conflict and moved international public opinion. Estimates of deaths, largely from hunger and disease, vary. But historians frequently cite figures in the hundreds of thousands to over 1 million civilian deaths during the war years. Biafra sought international recognition and aid. A few countries and many international NGOs and private relief groups responded with moral and material support, but most major powers did not recognize Biafra as an independent state, and international diplomacy failed to stop the war. By late 1969, Biafra's military position had crumbled. On January 8, 1970, Ojukwu fled to Côte d'Ivoire. His deputy, Major General Philip Effiong, negotiated terms. On January 15, 1970, federal authorities proclaimed a policy of no victor, no vanquished, as the Biafran Republic formally came to an end. The war left a deeply scarred region and millions of survivors living with loss and displacement. After the war, the federal government pursued reintegration policies, but many Igbo felt politically and economically marginalized in the decades that followed. Questions about repatriation of property, political representation, and perceived exclusion fed a persistent sense of grievance in southeastern Nigeria. In the 1990s and 2000s, new movements revived the idea of Biafran self-determination. One of them, the Movement for the Actualization of the Sovereign State of Biafra, or MASOB, used largely peaceful protest. In 2012, a new group called the Indigenous People of Biafra, or IPOB, was founded. IPOB combined mass protests with media activism, led in large part by Nnamdi Kanu, whose Radio Biafra broadcast from London helped mobilize public support. Nnamdi Kanu became the visible leader of IPOB. He was first arrested in Nigeria in 2015 on charges that included treason, and later released on bail in 2017. He fled the country while on bail, but was reportedly re-arrested in 2021, and brought back to Nigeria to face trial on multiple counts. The Nigerian government has outlawed IPOB and labeled it a terrorist organization. Clashes between security forces and separatist elements have led to periodic violence and waves of arrests, court cases, and international press coverage. The memory of the 1967-1970 war, the images of famine, the stories of displacement, provides the emotional fuel for modern separatism. But IPOB is different in its media tactics, transnational leadership, and the digital era in which it operates. Where Biafra relied on territory and conventional warfare, IPOB relies on mass protests, social media, overseas supporters, and broadcast messaging to pressure the Nigerian state. The Biafran War remains one of modern Africa's most wrenching tragedies. Its political lessons, how to build inclusive institutions, how to deal with grievance, and how to prevent escalation, are still painfully relevant. Today's calls for Biafra reflect unresolved issues of justice, equity, and belonging. Whether through politics, dialogue, or reconciliation, the only lasting solution must address both memory and material rights for affected communities.